To be or not to be hacked, that's the question that should be asked more often by the businesses in the United States. So what is hacking? Well, I'm a white hat hacker, as you can tell. And that's a guy who writes clever code quickly. And one time I wrote 13 lines of code in 10 minutes, and it improved the speed of the operating system 25%. What a hack, okay? Well, actually, I lied. I'm not a white hat hacker, because it took me 4 months to figure out those 13 lines of code. And a hacker doesn't plan, he just does. And that's why there are so many bugs in the world, okay? A little disoriented here. So now we want to talk about the other guys, the black-hatted hackers. These are the guys that do this. For instance, Yahoo lost 3 billion customer files in one hack. That cost them $4 billion. There's about $1.5 trillion in losses per year by hackers. And you and I could all divide that up and retire, you know. It's a lot of money, but it's growing at the 8 to 18% a year. So how does that happen? Well, let's understand what hacking is. Hacking is breaking into a system. It's not walking through an open door. Take, for instance, a large number of people have passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or PASSWORD, okay? Those are the 2 most common passwords, okay? There are people also that download software from a website, perhaps named hackersheaven.com, okay? And, you know, that isn't really hacking. That's just stealing from people who make ill-advised decisions, okay? In today's world, there's only one unhackable operating system, and I'm going to talk about that, okay? Now, what is a black-hatted hacker? I'm also not that. He's the guy that's the enemy of the operating system. And you can see this black-hatted hacker ran into a secure operating system and is the victim of a good left hook, okay? So let me tell you about how I got into this business of building secure systems, completely by accident. I started at IBM as a systems engineer working at SAC headquarters in the Directorate of Intelligence. And I was optimizing SAC's operations. That's what we needed to do. And it's really nice to know the government tries to be efficient, you know. So SAC was an exceptionally secure place, except if you used explosives, coercion, or bribes. And that, again, is not hacking. The security was good. They had badges, they had guards, they had vaults, and they had steel doors. And that kind of morphed into the model I had of how you build a secure operating system. So, first thing I want to talk to you about is I invented the concept of a hack meter. And I'm going to use this throughout this presentation, so you must take notes. Everyone have a piece of paper, okay? Okay. The hack meter in 1963 didn't have a whole lot of oomph to it. You can see down at the bottom of the gauge that there's nothing there. All the systems were wide open, okay? Now, we want to get to a point where the hack meter is pegged to the top. And they color-coded there the various aspects you have to put into a system in order to make it secure. One of these is authority management, and this defines the rules of access. Who gets at what? The next thing, you have to have an enforcement mechanism. The SAC's guards' guns were very useful there, okay? Hey, boom, okay? They almost lost a major in the underground once because he violated security, and the guard was a little nervous, okay? You want to isolate assets as well. If you put everything you want to protect in a separate vault, they don't get all stolen at once, okay? And in a computer, programs and data are the things you're trying to protect. Now, the next thing you need is a reliable system, because more than half of all penetrations today are because of faults, that's a bug, in the operating system or the hardware. Unfortunately, we haven't figured out how to build either perfect software or hardware. So in addition to that, there's a layer behind that where you build into the hardware a lot of checking. And I'm going to tell you a little story about one incident I had at SAC. I was in the underground, and a major walked up to me, and he said, I got a bug in my program, and I can't fix it. Can you help me? And I said, of course, being very confident. And he said, my tankers are wiping out my bombers. Well, that was in his program. We don't like that to really happen in the world. And that seemed wrong to me, being smart. Okay. What happened was that it wasn't a bug in his program at all. It was a bug in the hardware that allowed his program to do something that it should have never been allowed, because that machine didn't have enough checking in it. The next machine IBM delivered would have completely disallowed that. So you would think that problem is gone. Well, right now, Intel has 3 of these problems that are active, and they're called Foreshadow, Spectre, and Meltdown, which sound very friendly, okay? But they are huge holes in security, because any program, if they execute the right sequence of instructions, all of a sudden can take over the entire system. A hacker's delight. The industry believes that all complex, high-performance mainframes or computers have these problems, but they also believe that none of IBM's do, because they have scads more checking than any of the other ones. So now let's go on and take a look at the genesis of a secure system, which started about 55 years ago. Is anybody that old in here? No, okay. That was 1964, and this system is now referred to in the press as the mainframe, and I worked with it in its operating system. The industry said it was an $8 billion gamble, okay? That's a lot of money, but investment between then and 1988 was $1/3 of $1 trillion in today's dollars. Put that in perspective, that's about twice Jeff Bezos' former net worth. Okay? Now, at that time, the market wanted certain things from a computer. They wanted performance, reliability, and availability, and nobody was thinking too much about security. Okay? But that system was arranged this way. Did I skip a slide somehow or other? No, I guess not. Yes, I did. I wonder how that happened. Okay. No, I didn't. Okay. My short-term memory is not as good as it used to be. As you can see by the hack meter here, the hacking resistance to the system wasn't too high, but it did have some characteristics that later proved useful. I have here a picture of how memory is laid out in at that time. All the memory was visible to everything. Any program could look at anything else any other program was doing. And let's take, for example, that green program number 2. It must be Irish, it's so green. Okay. Program 2 can store only inside the dark green area. It cannot store anywhere else. And that's true of each of the other programs. The red guys, though, the operating system, the subsystems, can store anywhere, and they had a little problem I call stomping. If they accidentally stored somewhere else, who knows what was going to happen. Gave a problem that was very hard to solve. Okay? So, but there was some isolation here, and it looked like a pretty good operating system. Okay? Oops, did it again. Okay? Now, the problem with it was that the operating system did stomp on other things, and it caused failures. And when it caused failures, the customers tended to wail. And some of the customers complained to the corporate office. And Boeing CEO said to the CEO of IBM, if our airplanes were as reliable as yours, no one would fly. Okay, that's a little ironic now, tragically. Okay. So, as Pogo said, we have met the enemy and he is us. So the CEO formed a corporate department of quality, and I got to ride herd on the operating systems. And my target initially were bugs, okay? And after a short while, I determined that shooting them one at a time wasn't going to work. That we had to make changes into the way we develop systems and not allow the bugs to get in the first place. The first big change we made after that was in 1974. And we introduced a concept called virtual memory, which we stole from a company in England. And it made much better use of memory and made programming easier. And with that, it was more reliable. So there were fewer errors. And we added features in the hardware that allowed us to catch more of them during the development process. So the whole thing allowed us to build a higher quality system. Okay? It had another feature that was very handy. It improved the isolation of memory. Before I said everybody could look at everything. Now the green guys can only look at themselves. So they can't look at the operating system or the other programs. So they can't peek and try to find holes. So the hack meter moved up. The system was hugely successful and the IBM stockholders cheered. Okay? But we added more and more subsystems. And that red area started getting cramped up. But you notice the green area shrunk. So things started to slow down a little. At that time, there were hardly any hackers because there wasn't a lot of communications that allowed them to remotely get into a computer. So we had happy hackers, okay? Nice, friendly-looking guy, okay? Until Rockoff came along. It was a surprise to me. I didn't know it was coming. And it was a disappointment to the hackers. It's called the Resource Access and Control Facility. It is an important part of what we're hearing today, so I want you to repeat after me in a kind of a snarl, Rockoff, okay? Okay. Okay? It made the black hats cry. So sad. It had credentials like SAC badges. It had rules like laws, automatic enforcement, and it sent violators to a subsystem called Recovery Termination Manager, where termination was the active word. Okay? At that time, we also got encryption, which was in effect a memory protection for data. You can steal the data, but it's useless because you can't understand it. Okay, we still had the subsystems killing us. We had bugs killing us. Everywhere you looked, there were those darn lousy bugs. So the question was how to exterminate, and that irate CEO really helped, motivates people, okay? So we found that one key was having rigid development processes that everybody follows, and if they don't, we send them to the Recovery Termination Manager, okay? And it really helped that a lot of people had a lot of good ideas to improve quality. By 1980, quality was 10 to 100 times better than any other operating system. And now that quality was up, it was on to my next job as a technology strategist for the mainframe hardware and the operating systems. At that time, things that you use every day, the ATMs, checkout counters, gas pumps, etc., were slowing down, okay? Those memory constraints in the green and red area were getting to us. And security was frequently popping up on the customer's mind. So I assigned this problem to my architecture team, and they went away for 4 months, and they came back with an idea they called access registers. And it really improved the isolation of the subsystems and the programs. So I looked at it and I said, not good enough, because we need to put more of the control of authority and access to data into hardware. The reason you want it in hardware, the hacker can't get at it. And that's a very good feature for the enforcement mechanism. So they went away for another month and a half, and they came back, and it was wonderful. The world swooned. The IBM programmers, though, they sounded a little irritated. They said, why didn't we do that in the first place? That was hard to answer. The hardware guy said, though, oh, this is a piece of cake to do. It's really easy. And the industry pundits said, it's a far better approach. So what did it do? It allowed us to transition from what was now a very constrained system, that green is almost invisible, to a system that looked like this, where the programs and the subsystems, which I show in different colors here, were actually the same. They had the same structures and everything, except the hardware could give each authority for the job they had to do. So if they didn't need a pistol, they didn't get a pistol. They didn't need a hammer, they didn't get a hammer. In addition to that, we invented the idea of memory spaces that only contain data, which really constrained the programmer, unconstrained the programmer, such that it was easier for them to write their programs. So with the hardware enforcement mechanism, the isolation, and the ease of programming, the hack meter got really right up near the top, and it was maxed out. So the objectives that I told you about earlier were met by these solutions that we just went through. Okay. So in 1992, 4 years later, the mainframe met the internet, and it won. In 27 years that the internet has enabled hacking, it has never been hacked. IBM says it's the most secure system available, if you turn on Rockoff. Some industry experts say it's been hacked by a crook who stole $4,000 from a bank. The crook went to the clink for 2 years and got out, went to his website and put up a note. And this is a quote. It was not a hack. They didn't turn on Rockoff. Okay. So 96% of the banks, 90% of the top insurance companies, 71% of the Fortune 500 use this to protect their and your data. Meanwhile, the rest of the systems are like this. They're out there patching their systems one at a time, and it's like patching a 50-year-old bike tire over and over again. It is still leak. These systems are being hacked more and more often each year, 18% growth in the hack rate. They don't have a security rating because the system that's out there for providing those ratings is so slow, but by the time they get a rating, the release of the operating system is obsolete. So no one knows how good or how bad any of these systems are. So the rating system just does not work. But there are systems that work. For instance, for auto pollution, they stick a gauge up the tailpipe and they read it. Fast, easy, cheap. The reading is basically the rating. For systems like this, it would be easy to do. You have a user, he's got the really colorful screen, and if he gets hacked, they're allowed to, okay, send a report to the rating agency and to the vendor. You all recognize the Apple bicycle tire, I hope. Okay? The vendor then looks at the hack report, analyzes it, sends the analysis to the rating agency, who sticks it in a database, puts it online, and anybody can go and find out how well any of these systems are doing relative to security. Okay? If we don't do this, this is what we're going to continue to get. All these hacks. Okay? And you're going to have some effects. You're going to lose money. You may lose your medical records because you have deleterious effects on lots of things. You probably have anxiety. But the worst thing about it is most of these headlines are involved with cyber warfare, which would really disrupt the whole world. And that, to me, is really scary. So, if we solve this problem, this headline might be true. Okay? So, please make it true. I really need the $1 million. Okay? And by the way, if you can throw in the Nobel Peace Prize, I'll take it too. Okay. Thanks for your attention, and thanks to the 4,000 people that built this system.